Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Trisha Pethick, founding director of Muslim Prisoner Project. I wish I could be there in person at what would have been my first visit to Texas, but Allah is the best of planners. We're based in upstate New York, but we serve nationwide. And as I speak to you in the middle of a New York winter, I'm reminded that in our prison systems, every day is winter. Every day is scarcity and longing for the warm sun of companionship, of knowledge, and of a light at the end of the tunnel in the form of tawbah to Allah. Everyone on this panel has a unique vantage point. I was a state prison chaplain for 5 years, and before that, volunteered or was in a per diem capacity at a county jail and then a federal prison. During that time, I led Muslim women in prayer, taught classes, made rounds through the prison, including solitary confinement, managed conflict between inmates and staff, acted as a consultant to the institution on religious practices and accommodations, and I received and delivered death notifications to inmates of all faiths. Somehow, in this half-time capacity, I also oversaw an inmate fundraiser, which functioned like a mini business inside the prison, and it raised money for me to order Islamic materials. Ordering books was a process of filling out a form, photocopying the titles, providing clarifications as to what they contained, waiting for approval, and finally, waiting for them to arrive in the prison where they would be searched. After they passed inspection, then and only then would they be available for inmates to check out. This was the process in a prison lucky enough to have a Muslim chaplain. In most jails and prisons, there isn't one. No books, no classes. If you're lucky, you might have a Quran if the chaplain manages to get some donations from the local Muslim community. Unfortunately, we at Muslim Prisoner Project have received calls from frustrated Christian chaplains whose calls to the local Muslim community for assistance have gone unanswered. In July 2021, the Office of the Inspector General at the Department of Justice issued an audit of the Federal Bureau of Prisons Management and Oversight of its Chaplaincy Services program, which found that in the federal prisons, there are 15 Catholic chaplains, 13 Muslim chaplains, and a whopping 199 Protestant federal chaplains for the entire country. It also found that in order to meet staffing guidelines, the BOP, Bureau of Prisons, ought to have 359 chaplains. It has 236. Having a chaplain is the ideal. Having a paid visitor is the next best ideal. Having a volunteer is the lowest. Sending no one or having no sense of how many Muslims are in our nearby county jail should be a non-starter. Every masjid in this country should proactively reach out to its county jail to determine need. Brother Ejaz and Salam Reentry have pioneered a way forward in Harris County, Texas, with a masjid-funded part-time position in the local jails. Let's give them the money and the manpower to expand this. Truth is, we're playing catch-up to other faiths when it comes to prison ministry. A 2003 article in the journal Internal Affairs, entitled When God Goes to Prison, described just how far other faiths have pushed the envelope to bring a faith-based message to the carceral state, while we are still asking for an envelope. A program called Interchange Freedom Initiative, IFI, was begun by a former Nixon aide who became a born-again Christian while serving time for Watergate. The program literally allowed an entire prison unit to be turned over to a faith-based program. It operated the Vance unit, which, as some of you know, is right there in Texas. IFI also operated in Missouri, Kansas, and in Iowa, where it was successfully challenged in court as a violation of the separation of church and state. It later rebranded itself as Prison Fellowship Academy. In the article, one of their representatives counters criticism, saying, quote, that the only religious prison in Texas is an evangelical Christian one is the result of factors beyond our control. Other faiths, he said, haven't stepped up and been willing to provide a program for those people who profess a faith in that religion. In every state where IFI runs prisons, the state first makes a request for proposals to organizations of all faiths to run a wing of a prison according to their own beliefs about how best to reduce recidivism, and no other groups have answered the call. Let the Muslims, Hindus come forward, said Louis D. Solomon, a professor at the George Washington University Law School, whose forthcoming book, In God We Trust, defends the constitutionality of state-funded faith-based programs. It's open to all religious groups to do something, he says, unquote. This is a challenge to us to do more. We know faith plays a big role in Texas. Perhaps some in our community feel uncomfortable by overt displays of Christianity, given the anti-Islamic sentiments that sometimes accompany it. Perhaps some of us have even settled for a bargain, that we would leave our religion at the door and take up as little space as possible, as long as others do the same. But others are not hiding. They know that that is not the vision of our country's founders, a vision that guaranteed the right to religious practice for all people, even prisoners, and embodied that First Amendment right in the prison chaplain. Despite their eventual loss, that program had been successful, and it continues, as it started, as one program among many, even if it no longer runs an entire prison. So, I ask those of you here and those of you tuning in virtually, who among you will accept the challenge issued to us? Who will go back to the board of their masjid and pitch the idea of jail visitation? Who will help raise money for such a person so they can receive a little compensation? And side note, for decades, much of this work was done unpaid by the Black Muslim community. Who will be that person who visits, fighting back feelings of their own inadequacy, fears of the prison environment, or even fears of the prisoners themselves? I will close with prisoner feedback that we have received at Muslim Prisoner Project. Imagine, if this is the impact we can have through books, how much impact can you have as a person visiting? I am writing Muslim Prisoner Project so that my children may receive gifts on both Eids. Since 2018, I've been signing my children up for Angel Tree, but being that I'm Muslim and trying to teach the deen to my children, it doesn't help if I keep sending Christmas presents. Here's another. The books you send turn my cell into a useful place. And as I get closer to re-entering society and returning to my family, I feel more prepared and confident in my Islam. Here's another. The brief emails and correspondence have been very influential for me. Take care, and I'll send an email once I complete the book, God willing. I was trying to learn too much at one time. Reading these books has shown me that I have to take it one thing at a time. I'm so thankful for your books. May Allah reward you. And finally, this prisoner says, I was very pleased that the Muslim community reached out to me. I was just thinking to myself that I hadn't heard from any Muslim followers, and it was kind of hurtful, to say the least. Thank you once again for believing and not forgetting us in prison. So, brothers and sisters, let's go out there and serve the hidden ummah. Please visit us at muslimprisonerproject.org, and I wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.